I'm gonna basically try to squish all 414 pages into the next 8 days. This is very culty. It really could have been this like propulsive narrative force. It's not really a type of book that you would read as an Orwell fangirl. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the third and final part of my 1Q84 book series little review video thing. I just decided this morning whether or not I was actually going to finish the third and final book. So I have part 1 and part 2 up on my channel. I think part 1 was, I was going in order of like book time. Book 1 or part 1 was April through June. And then I think July through September was part 2. I have been slowly making my way through. Yeah, I've just lost some steam. So I just decided this morning whether or not I was going to try to fit the third and final part, whether or not I was going to finish it or not. It's 414 pages. I have 8 days until the end of the year, and I have done basically no reading. Book 3 is October through December. And in October, I was prioritizing like spooky reads, so I never picked this up. In November, we moved into this apartment, and so ever since then, I've just been like obsessed with, getting everything exactly how I want it and kind of redoing and making over the rooms. And I have been reading, but it hasn't been this book. Thing is I don't have any shots from October and November to kind of show like that passage of time that I was doing in part 1 and 2, where you kind of get the sense that like, oh, she's reading this over like a couple months time. All of that to say, I'm going to start part 3 today, but I'm going to basically try to squish all 414 pages into the next 8 days. I'm just going to try to speed read and hope that I actually enjoy it, and things are happening and it all is wrapped up quite nicely, because I will say, if I ever read a chonker like this again, that's like well over 1,000 pages, it's going to have to be one that I have vetted fully. I should have probably read more reviews than I did. I kind of just went off the fact that it's called 1Q84 and there's a reference in there to 1984, which is my favorite book. I haven't been as obsessed with it as what I thought because it hasn't been really related to 1984 really at all that I've noticed. So that's where I'm at. There's a couple pieces of criticism online that I want to read just to like make sure that I'm really giving a good articulate review. Without further ado, let's get to reading because I have a lot to read. Guys on Spotify. I was actually looking up the audiobook. For whatever reason, I've been living under a rock and Spotify has audiobooks. I was looking up whether or not 1Q84 was an audiobook on Spotify. Norwegian Wood is on here, Kafka on the Shore. That's pretty sweet. If you are wanting to just listen, I was kind of hoping to just put book 3 like on 1.5 or 2 times speed and just like speed listen, but that's not going to happen. I'm going to have to actually do the work. There is immersion playlists. That's the thing that I'm most interested in. So there's this one in particular. It says, "Are you reading 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami? Use this playlist to experience full immersion. Listen from top to bottom." I might just start at the top. It's only a 6-hour playlist, but this is really kind of cool and interesting. So I'll probably put that playlist on the soundbar and get to reading. thought it might be time for a little reading update. I feel like this vlog is going to be one of the most scattered reading vlogs that I've ever filmed. I'm actually past the 1100 page mark. I'm on chapter 27. There are 31 chapters in book 3, so I've got a couple chapters left. So I'm getting there. I am getting there. I've got this much left. This is the 50 pages that technically I have left myself for tomorrow, which is the last day of the year. However, I might try to speed read it tonight, finish it tonight, or read into some of those 50 pages so that I would only have a little bit to read tomorrow morning. I realized that I had actually forgotten to write my book 2 notes. All of the pink sticky notes are for book 2. And somehow I forgot to put all of those in my reading journal. So now I have book 2 and 3 to write up in my reading journal. So I'm hoping that I kind of remember the things that happened. In terms of like what's actually happening in the book, it's definitely going a little bit slower than what I would like. I'm not even somebody who needs a lot of plot or a lot of action, but there has been a lot in this book, I will say, and I'm sure it'll be at the end when I do my full review, of internal thoughts. Like we know their thoughts, we know the characters' thoughts. And so it's just a lot of internal dialogue, which I don't mind. But it's a lot of it. And so I do think, I have a feeling one of my biggest things in the review is going to be that it could have been shorter and that there could have been a lot of extraneous detail removed. I do think that that's a pet peeve of mine, and I noticed that in books that I feel like are a little bit too long. Alright, today's the day. We are finishing the book. I think I left about 40 pages for myself yesterday. It is December 31st, 2023, so I'm going to knock out those pages and get it done, and that is going to be my last book of the year. Some of my final end of the year things will be to type up all the notes, or not type up, write up all the notes from books 2 and 3. So all of the pink and like lime green sticky notes, I have to log those. This will be the last thing that I put in here. And I have just enough pages left, I think. So I'm on page like 175. Once my reading notes are finished, I can print out the table of contents and then open the new one, which I'm very excited for. That light gonna be distracting? Okay, are we ready to do this? I think so. It's been a couple of days. I've collected my thoughts, I've read some criticism, I've taken some notes, and I have some things to share. Instead of taking you through like what I specifically thought of book 3, I'm gonna kind of pull back a little bit and do more of like a macro scale review, and just kind of tell you my thoughts as a whole, like books 1, 2, and 3, all of them together, whether or not I thought it was worth the time that I spent reading it. It is 1,157 pages. It did take me from April to December to read it. I was obviously reading a ton of other stuff alongside this, kind of at the same time, because I'm also doing my Reading Around the World challenge, which I talk about all the time on my channel. So I ended up giving this book as a whole, which I am counting it kind of all as one book, even though it is technically 3 books in one, 3.5 stars. So, wasn't my favorite read ever. Will I continue to read Murakami? Absolutely. I think I'm actually probably going to like a lot of his other stuff better, just based off of other synopses that I've read of other books, and like the star ratings that other readers have given his other books. So I just don't think this one was what I thought it was. It's not very similar to 1984. I mean, there's a few themes. I picked this one up particularly because of the reference to 1984 in the title. I was sorely disappointed because there's only a few references. It's not really a type of book that you would read as an Orwell fangirl. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. 1984, the year is obviously when both books take place. And so for Murakami, the letter Q in Japanese is actually like a homonym. It's like the same sound as the number 9. So it's more of like a pun that he was doing rather than actually referencing 1984. There are a few references to Big Brother, so he does reference the book. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, this one right here, the famous novel by George Orwell, I consider this his absolute best. I reference this book as my favorite. If people ask, it's just incredible. It basically takes place it was written in the 50s, but it takes place in the year 1984, which was the future at the time that Orwell was writing. And it was this imagined totalitarian state. So there was something called thought crime, doublethink, all these different terms that basically just kept the people oppressed and kept their thoughts, basically even your thoughts weren't safe, and the government could come in at any time and kill you if you even had a thought that disagreed with or went against the ideology of the party. There were people called the thought police, and it was their job to listen to what you were mumbling maybe in your sleep. Or Winston Smith, the main character in this, has a diary that he keeps that eventually, gets him into big trouble. So this is like the quintessential dystopian novel in my opinion, and so that is what led me to purchasing and wanting to read 1Q84. Yes, they are similar in a couple of themes. So I would say they were similar in the idea of memory and the importance of literature, just the importance of writing and whatever the truth means, and then also love. But those are so general. I feel like you could say that about a lot of books, like having that in common. I'm actually going to link below chapter 12 of a book. I only read that one chapter because it's kind of just like a little essay all on its own from a book that a professor wrote who studies Murakami. Like Murakami is like her specialty. So I'll link that in the description box if you guys are interested in reading a super in-depth essay thing related to these two. And how they are related to each other, and also how they're not. I found it really fascinating. We do have 2 main characters, like a male and female, who have some sort of like romantic relationship happening. In 1984, it's Winston and Julia, and in 1Q84, it's Tango and Aomame. And those are the 2 main people who we get the perspective of. So we get third-person perspective, alternating chapters between the 2 of them. Tango is a writer, and he's rewriting a novel that was written by a 17-year-old who people tend to kind of make fun of her. She just seems a little off. She's a little weird. And so he takes on the task of ghostwriting that very popular work. It's become a bestseller. And that's kind of what most of his time is preoccupied with. And then Aomame is, I forget like what her actual profession is. It's like fitness instructor or something like that. But she's like an assassin by night. Other than those things that I just mentioned, there's not a lot that these 2 books share. So be mindful of that. I also honestly found, even though we have so much extraneous detail in here and so much of the thoughts, every single thought that passes through the mind of these main characters, we do know and we do get to hear. I weirdly found the characters in 1984 more compelling, and I would absolutely reread this much quicker than I would reread this. Not even based on length. Like, obviously, if you're gonna reread one, this is gonna be the thing that you spend, this is gonna be the one that you spend a lot less time in. Length aside, just for plot and characters and all of that, I would definitely reread 1984 before I read one of these books. Kind of going on with the length, something funny that Murakami did that I kind of picked up on, but I'm glad I read it in the criticism that I read, because he references Proust several times, specifically in Search of Lost Time. I think it's one of the longest books maybe ever. I could be wrong, but he references it several times. Mame, while she's hiding out for a couple of months, couple of months, something like that, she is given some literature to read to help pass the time, and one of those things is In Search of Lost Time. The reviewers said it's kind of a cheeky reference to how much time the reader is spending in this book as well. So it's sort of like Murakami's Breaking the Fourth Wall, which I felt like he did a little bit with a few other times with other random things. I thought that was kind of funny. I would say the main differences between the two is this is very culty. 1984 is more political, for sure. So even though this does like kind of, you could extrapolate it out to reference politics, it specifically references Sakigake most of the time, which is the made-up cult that references a real-life cult in Japan that launched like a gas attack in the Tokyo metro in the 90s. They were the cult that he sort of loosely based Sakigake off of. I definitely thought about like Scientology. Any reference to the cult whenever that came up between like different characters and they were talking about it, because like the abuse of children comes up a lot. And if you saw, I think it was on A&E, they did like an expose kind of for it. I know there's a couple of celebrities still really actively involved. All of the things that I know about Scientology from watching documentaries and stuff definitely gave me the same vibes as Sakigake. So if you like movies like Midsummer, I feel like you will like this, but while the cult is central to the plot, it honestly doesn't come up as often as I would have liked. The question that you're sort of left with at the end of the day is kind of what is reality? And you're just sort of left questioning like what is truth, which is a theme for sure that comes up in 1984 a lot, because Winston is constantly rewriting history. That's like his job. He works in the Ministry of Truth, rewriting the history books all day. So that is for sure a similar theme, something that they share. And the Q in 1Q84 is supposed to reference like a question. So I think that is the thing that Murakami kind of wants to leave you with, is just this very big kind of abstract concept of what is truth. What is reality? Because that is what Mame is questioning pretty much the entire time that she's in 1Q84, which is sort of like supposed to be like a parallel universe to the current time that she's in, which is 1984. So the whole time she's like not really sure what's real or not. So if you don't mind things being very ambiguous, I kind of felt like he tied up some loose ends at the end for sure, but not every question that I had was answered. That can be kind of frustrating. I don't mind that. I don't mind a vague ending if it's kind of supposed to be like the author is letting the reader decide how something is supposed to finish out. I kind of like that. It puts me in control a little bit. I feel like as a reader, I don't necessarily like things spelled out for me. I didn't mind that, but I know that some readers, that is going to be a big pet peeve, is the fact that he really does not. There's a lot of unanswered questions, and that can leave a reader feeling very frustrated after having spent the amount of time that you spend reading a book like this. It can be kind of frustrating to not really maybe feel like you fully understood what the author was trying to get across to you. So just PSA for that if you are wanting to dive into this book. And then kind of going off of that with Aomame and Tango, their relationship just was not as compelling as Winston and Julia's. They aren't allowed to be together, and so it's very much like a forbidden love kind of thing, Romeo and Juliet. I love that tension and that friction, and I didn't really find the same thing here. The only kind of like tenuous connection that they had was that they went to elementary school together, and there's like a scene where Tango takes up for Aomame when she's being bullied, and then she goes back into class later when they're alone and like holds his hand, and so they're supposed to have formed some sort of like incredible bond with each other. They have so little interaction with each other, I will say. We're supposed to be kind of rooting for them. When you have two characters who are supposed to be like trying to find their way to each other, and they don't really for like 95% of the novel. There's no connection. Like I didn't feel anything. I have to give them some sort of interaction with each other in order for the reader to kind of root for them. If they never spend any time with each other and all we do is go back to this one memory of them holding hands in class, that's not enough for me. The romance in this could have been the thing that was like propelling it forward. It really could have been this like propulsive narrative force, and it wasn't. It lacked majorly in that area. If I had to give the book a rating just on the romance part, it would be like 2 out of 10. Those are my thoughts. I hope that was somewhat coherent. I still feel a little bit jumbled, to be completely honest, just because there is so much story here. You guys let me know if there's a particular Murakami book that you love that I should read next, because I would love to read more of his stuff, but I really don't know anywhere to begin. It would actually be nice if you've read one and you can let me know one where maybe the prose was a little bit more kind of like lyrical. I've heard his writing style described as kind of Baroque, which I kind of get, but also like there wasn't really any passages that were like beautiful passages that were quotable. So if you've read a book by Murakami that has really beautiful language and really quotable passages, I would love to hear about it, and I would love to hear that recommendation in the comments, because that's kind of what I enjoy more in terms of a writing style. You guys let me know what Murakami that you have read and loved or didn't love. Thank you for watching to the end, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.